No, I mean, look, there's a major difference between just saying Iran won't get nukes, which could mean anything, and saying I will launch a war against Iran if they enrich up to 60% and are still willing to negotiate down the enrichment. I'm sorry, those are just very different things.
Well, you called for his impeachment before he launched the strike, and we're not. Dave, you've been talking. Hold on a second. You always do this where you say, let me finish a sentence, but then you address a point and then scattershot about different points. You called for this before.
On the exact point that you just asked me about, Stephen. You're claiming I'm filibustering. You're interrupting every time I speak.
Yesterday, Dave Smith had a brutal smackdown of Steven Crowder in a debate on the Iran war. Steven Crowder really exposed himself throughout the entirety of this debate. And if you want to watch that, I suggest you go check it out. I mean, Steven Crowder is even uploading some of the most embarrassing highlight reels to his own Twitter account, which is incredible. I don't know who his clipper is, who the person running the Crowder Twitter account is, but they clearly don't like Steven Crowder because they're uploading these parts of the videos that he's just getting annihilated on. He's chosen to do this debate when he really doesn't know anything about what's going on here. Let's take a listen.
When we probably don't have a president with a more clear track record on any issue than Donald Trump on Iran. If I said Israel, I meant to say Iran, where he said they can't get nukes. That famous escalator ride down, immediately said, and if I'm president, Iran won't get nukes. And before.
So let's contextualize here. Steven Crowder is saying, well, Donald Trump has a very clear position, has had a very clear position on Iran from the moment that he said he's going to run for president back in whatever, 2015, 2014, whenever it was. And that is Iran cannot get nukes. Okay, Iran can't get nukes, but were they trying to get nukes? No, they were not trying to get nukes. They were adhering to the terms of the JCPOA still when the United States decided to airstrike them. Their uranium enrichment was at 60%, only because, it was only that high because the United States unilaterally withdrew from the JCPOA, from the Iran deal, violating the deal. Trump claimed it was because Iran was collaborating with al-Qaeda extremists, despite the fact that every single quarterly or annual report that the 16 plus intelligence agencies in the United States conducted found that Iran obviously is not working with al-Qaeda or ISIS or any of these groups. In fact, they are enemies and they've been fighting each other all across the Middle East. That was the context presented by the United States, by the State Department, by Pompeo, Bolton. They were all saying it. Trump said it. Tulsi Gabbard called him out extensively at the time for withdrawing from the agreement over what I just mentioned. So they withdrew not because of actual violations that Iran allegedly, purportedly, made with regard to the JCPOA. They withdrew over some bogus lie that came not even from the U.S. intelligence community, but came from John Bolton and Mike Pompeo. Previously to the U.S. withdrawing from the JCPOA in Trump's first term, Iran's enrichment levels were very low, like 3 to 5%. When the U.S. withdrew, of course, the terms of the deal that the U.S. signed on to and that the Europeans signed on to stipulated that Iran could enrich the uranium up to 60%, which they did.
For that on X saying Iran cannot get a nuke, 60 days talking, negotiating. They weren't playing ball. Time is up. You can disagree with it. But to suggest that that's a betrayal, I would say that's.
Sorry, I'm going to be interrupting a lot. Just quickly. Yes, it is a betrayal because the U.S. had scheduled one more meeting to have with the Iranians to negotiate the JCPOA. Let's leave aside what they were actually proposing to the Iranians, as absurd as it was, but there was still one more meeting they were supposed to have, and then Israel started the war.
It's the exact opposite. People maybe need to do the research on the candidate who they're supporting, in your case, endorsing, electing. He was very consistent about that.
No, I disagree completely. And I think that Donald Trump also bragged about not getting us in any new wars and bragged about ending wars, many of which he didn't end. But no, I mean, look, there's a major difference between just saying Iran won't get nukes, which could mean anything, and saying I will launch a war against Iran if they enrich up to 60% and are still willing to negotiate down the enrichment. I'm sorry, those are just very different things.
Well, you called for his impeachment before he launched the strike, and we're not. Dave, you've been talking. Hold on a second. You always do this where you say, let me finish a sentence, but then you address a point and then scattershot about different points. You called for this before.
On the exact point that you just asked me about, Stephen. You're claiming I'm filibustering. You're interrupting every time I speak.
No, I'm not, Dave. I want to address that one point, and then we'll go back. We're not at war. You called for his impeachment before the strike. I do think if you're talking about, what other option outside of diplomacy, because you said there are many other options, it could mean anything.
Donald Trump himself claimed that he was a part of this grand chessboard game where they would schedule one more meeting with the Iranians, but before the meeting takes place, Israel would launch their attack on Iran. Decapitation strikes, by the way, on Iranian leadership. This is not about the nuclear targets or whatever. This is about regime change. It became very clear very quickly that that's what this was all about. So, yeah, if the president of the United States is arming Israel to the teeth so they can do this, giving them air defense so when Iran eventually responds, they can defend themselves, providing diplomatic cover for them to do this, going behind the scenes to negotiate these meetings for the future that are not ever going to happen because the U.S. knows that the Israelis are going to do. You get the idea. You can't just act like the strikes on the strikes on Iran by Israel have nothing to do with the United States, when Trump literally claims that they do. Maybe he didn't know about it. I don't know. It'd be very embarrassing if that's the case. And of course, that is a sincere possibility that the United States didn't know about this, or Trump himself didn't know about this. Maybe his intelligence community did not enlighten him about this plan. But that you can't dislodge the two after Trump comes out and states, no, we are aware of this.
Donald Trump, again, in context, if you look at the context, said it was a huge failure, Barack Obama's policy on Iran. He said that you cannot set red lines that you do not enforce, and I will enforce my red lines. Donald Trump was very clear. He set a red line, 60 days are up, so we've tried the diplomacy. Well, what other mechanisms are in place to prevent it?
Yeah, okay, well, I don't think, again, if you're saying that enriching up to 60% was the big problem, then the JCPOA wasn't a failure. They weren't enriching anywhere near to that level until Donald Trump tore up the agreement, excuse me, or walked away, pulled America out of the agreement. And yes, he arbitrarily set a timeline of 60 days, but there were meetings scheduled for the next day or 2 days later when Israel first struck them and Donald Trump walked away. So the alternative was obviously to keep negotiating. Look, Iran was there to negotiate down the 60% enrichment. They had been down to 3 to 5% when America was good standing members of the JCPOA. The obvious alternative would have been to keep negotiating.
So you believe that it's a more effective form of world leadership and an impeachable offense to set a date, a timeline, say last call. I've counted to 3, count to 3, and then say, I didn't mean it?
No, you idiot. What he's saying is that the offers that the U.S. was proposing before the strikes took place were absurd, far more absurd than the demands that were made in the JCPOA. I will say that the JCPOA was a terrible deal for the Iranians. For anyone that wants sovereignty for Iran, terrible deal. But the Iranians agreed to it. Different leadership at the time. Okay, different people, different context, different setting. But the United States was saying no uranium enrichment. Well, how are you supposed to have a nuclear industry for civilian use if you can't enrich uranium at all? You're supposed to rely on third-party countries to supply you with enriched uranium. You're going to have to purchase this. It's very expensive, very costly. Then that means that the whole point of the civilian application of this, nuclear technology becomes quite literally not feasible to continue because it's so expensive. And maybe a third-party country doesn't want to do that. Maybe Russia doesn't want to do that. Russia offered to host Iran's enriched uranium, also probably with the price tag. I don't think they were going to do that out of the goodness of their heart, but they offered to say, Iran, you're going to enrich this uranium. Okay, we will host it. This is absurd. It's all absurd. This is a far more harsh demand than anything that was made in the JCPOA. So why didn't the U.S. just go back to what the terms were in the original JCPOA and say, okay, Iran, 3 to 5% enrichment. Okay, depending on what you're using, this 3 to 5%.
No, I'm saying
but that would be what he would do effectively, right?
Yes.
I think that's silly for a president to do
that. Right. But that's not what I said. But you think what you said is silly. Okay, but what I'm saying.
No, he did say we're 60 days up. Was Iran negotiating? Did Iran come to the negotiating table? Did Iran allow inspections?
Finish whenever you want to, and then I'll try to.
I asked you that. Were the 60 days up? Did Donald Trump count to 3?
Yeah.
So he should continue negotiating after he sets a red line.
Yeah, well, no, Stephen. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit more than 1 cent.
Okay.
It's a little bit more than 1 centimeter deep. Okay.
Please enlighten me, as shallow as I am.
Dude, it's like you just.
I know. Go ahead.
No, just a lot of people told me that. Watch out, he's going to be constantly interrupting you. But I didn't realize it was actually going to be like this. Okay, so Donald Trump. What happened was Donald Trump had signaled at the beginning of the negotiations that he would be open to some enrichment, but that he wanted it to be brought down. And then Mark Levin and all of the hawks, they insisted that you put in the poison pill of absolutely no enrichment of uranium whatsoever. And he went along with that. And Iran was like, yeah, that's right. And then he set the 60 days. Now, look, I think it was a bad move to ever put that poison pill in and to ever set those 60 days. But yes, at that point, once you've done that, diplomacy in this case was obviously preferable to force. And I think, in fact, probably we are in a more likely position now that Iran breaks out and tries to get a nuclear weapon than we were if he had continued the negotiations. But certainly, you exhaust the negotiations. You try diplomacy as much as you can. War should always be an absolute last option. And he didn't exhaust that. Instead, he supported attacking them in the middle of the negotiations. That is dishonorable. It is unethical, and it's bad leadership.
Yeah, I don't think it's dishonorable.
Okay, so that's the first part. That's my first part. Not my favorite part, but I do like that part a lot. The second part actually rolls directly out of that I really like. So we'll continue playing.
I don't think it's unethical, and I don't think it's bad leadership. I think it would be bad leadership to allow a country to completely flagrantly disregard their own agreements, to not honor their word, to have international oversight committees that you cite, Dave, as the gold standard, saying, yeah, they're only a few weeks away from this kind of dangerous uranium enrichment, and then to say, you know what, let's continue diplomacy. So here's my question to you. Because you said impeach.
Just absolute lies. Who said that? Who said that? No one said that. The Grossi guy from the IAEA, he came out, after the war in Iran happened, the 12-day war, and he said, if anyone took to assume that based on my reports and findings and the IAEA's reports and findings that, Iran had a nuclear weapon or they were so close that this had to be done, no, you mistook what we were saying. Okay, you said that after. Now, as for the claim that Iran was violating the deal or something, I mean, what violations? If Iran was violating the deal, why did European states not pull out of the JCPOA? The US violated the deal by withdrawing unilaterally with having no proof that anyone else violated the deal back in Trump's first administration. But Europe continued to stay as a participant of this deal. Iran stayed as a participant of this deal, and they kept their uranium enrichment levels to 60% as per the deal stipulated if the U.S. withdrew.
You said war crimes, and it sounds to me like there's no president in our lifetime who you wouldn't bury beneath the prison for war crimes. Can you name one?
No, I think every president in my lifetime has been a war criminal. That's right.
Okay, so every president in your lifetime has been a war criminal. Impeach Donald Trump beneath the prison.
It's part of being a world empire, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Donald Trump is a neocon. As a matter of fact, I think he's the least neocon of all the presidents that we've had. We might just have.
I love that part. I don't think Donald Trump is a neocon. I think he's the least neocon of the presidents. So what is it? Is he's not a neocon, or he's the least neocon of all the presidents that we've had in modern history? Because those two statements don't add up.